privilege this afternoon to introduce Claudia, who was the coach of the championship-winning Townsville Fire and the WNBL in her own right as coach, and had been assistant coach on occasions before that as assistant coach in the championship-winning Townsville Fire. In case you don't know, Army and the Townsville Fire have a long association. In fact, Army sponsors the Townsville Fire certainly last season, this season, and we have a long relationship with the fire. However, Claudia is very accomplished in her own right. So, professional engineer, works infrastructure for the Townsville City Council, and was part of the remediation arising from the floods in 2019. And Claudia played basketball for the Canadian women's team, including representing her country at the Sydney 2000 Olympics. Aside from that, I hope someone writes a Wikipedia about you, because I think you've got a great story, and we're looking forward to hearing your story this afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you, and thanks for having me. If you can't hear me, just tell me and I'll yell out louder. So I guess I was going to speak a little bit about leadership, about some of the stuff we did with the fire. I'll talk about the monsoon and some of the things that we did there, and probably a little bit about my job now at council, leading some of the teams that I work for in there. So we've covered all that. So lots of basketball. I was fortunate to captain my country and got to play pro France and Spain and then Australia, and clearly we loved it here and I never left. There's no snow, so from Canada, Quebec, I don't know if anyone's been there, it's freezing all the time. And then, so not just a sports jock, got my 2 degrees and started working once I retired, once the knees didn't work anymore, as project manager, and then worked my way up and got to work on some really big projects, like the Flinders Street redevelopment was a $60 million project, and entertainment center refurb, all those ones, and then left to go coach full time, and then came back as general manager of infrastructure, probably in fleet. So in that role, my nominal role, I manage about $400 million of the capital expenditure for council and about 260 staff, so all the buildings we own, all the fleet plant equipment's under me. And recently, my director retired, that position got opened up, and I missed out. I didn't even get an interview, so I was a little bit upset about that. But one of the feedback I got was I didn't have enough experience in the water side of the business, and so just that general manager has resigned, so I put my hand up to act until we could fill that role. So currently my role is general manager of Townsville Water and Waste, so responsible for all the water, sewer, dams, and all the rubbish and landfills. So that's 450 plumbers and truck drivers and rubbish truck drivers. So it's quite exciting. It's a good change. I'm enjoying it. So I'll talk about a lot of the things that we did with the Townsville Fire and that I learned through becoming, or through head coach through trial and error. And one of the big things, and it applies in everything I do, with Townsville City Council as well, in terms of the team culture, and really, there's lots of ways you can define that. We just defined it as that's your brand, that's how we do things around here, our culture, and that drives how we behave. And everyone impacts the culture, and it's really important how you discuss that. So the big lesson for me in my rookie season, so my first year as a head coach, I guess for me as an athlete, I always put the team first. It was just natural. That was just the way it was. I just thought that, I'll do whatever I need to do for the team. That might come back. Yep. And what I realized is that it's not natural. Not everyone does that. And so the biggest mistake I made my rookie season is really not talking about the team culture enough. And then so we implemented that, talking about it all the time and just setting out what your values are and clearly sticking to them and emphasizing. So it's not, and you hear coaches say this one all the time, but it's not what you teach, it's what you emphasize. So it's what you say over and over again. And I was talking to Darren at lunch, and same thing at Townsville City Council. So our culture currently is probably the lowest it's been in a long time. Lots of people are fearful. There's really bad culture. We're working really hard to try to improve that and put some actions in place that will make people feel proud about working at Townsville City Council, but also, working a lot more collaboratively with each other rather than trying to bust each other's balls all the time. So one of the things the new CEO has done, he's changed our values to serve, and it's quite simple. S is for safety, so everyone goes home safely every day. E is for excellence. R is respect, V, value, E, enjoyment. I mean, they're always sort of similar what you end up with, but I think it's about how often you speak about it and how often you reward people for living those values. So what we did with, and the leaders in driving that culture, if you're a leader, team leader, is really important. And someone said to me one time, and it really stuck with me, is that anyone, so everyone, no one, sorry, your influence is never neutral. So you're always either positively influencing or negatively influencing, but you're never neutral. Right? So you got to make sure that everyone on your team understands what your values are, and you're talking about them all the time. And so with the fire, we created a shared vision. And so our motto was, you're entitled to nothing, grateful for everything. Right? So don't expect anything. Nothing's given to us for free. You don't have to work for it. You're not going to get a free call from the refs, despite Susie yelling at them every time. So we're going to have to work for everything. And then we had 3 things that we spoke about a lot. So leadership, so that there's about 1,000 different definitions of leadership that you can look up. Personally, that's my favorite one because it's quite simple, it's easy to remember as well. So that's your ability to make those around you better. Mental toughness, so I should remember it, is your ability to focus on the next most important thing. So that's something obviously really important in basketball. Not just throughout the season, but throughout games. Things happen really quickly. You might have a turnover, you might miss a shot, whatever it is. We need players to be able to just turn it around quickly and go from offense to defense or stop the play. They can't be dwindling or be sad, or not be sad, but be upset about turning the ball over or missing a shot because someone's scoring on them. Right, so that one's really important for us. And then selflessness. So because we're professional, we're a really good team and we had lots of good players. But there's only 5 players on the court. So there's lots of, managing egos and managing court time and who gets to shoot the ball. Because if you have the best player in the league, you haven't had Susie, right? But you're trying to get her to come in. So Susie Bakovic, I don't know if anybody knows her, but she's probably she is the best player that's played in the WNBL, the Australian Basketball League. So 7-time MVP of that league and played for us. And she's really big personality, but really good player. So when you have her on your team, she's going to shoot half the shots. And rightly so, because she makes all the shots she shoots. But again, you need to put good players around her so that otherwise they'll just double and triple team her. But it was really important about being selfless, because you got players that have come from other teams that might be used to getting 10, 15 shots a game and scoring 18, 20 points, to now playing with Susie and you're asking them to score 10 or 12 and only get 8 shots. And so we reminded them often about that. Sorry, going back to this one. So how I said I learned from my rookie season. So what I ended up doing in my second year, we put something called, so every athlete comes in and we do a personal development plan or performance plan, so a personal performance plan. And they fill it out, and then I would sit with them, we'd go through them, and it's about what you want to improve on the basketball court, might be what you want to improve nutrition-wise, how you're going to deal with your injuries, or what physical attribute you might need to improve on. So some players needed to have better core strength, or better jumping ability, or stronger shoulders, whatever it was. We had that all set out. We would work with that before the season started and try to set goals. And then another one in there we always included was obviously just mental performance. And funny story, so you had Jo Lukens come in. So she's a bit of a legend, she's very good. We've been working with her for years. What we actually found was that athletes were reluctant to go see her when we called her the sports psych, because no one wants to go see the psych. So we started introducing her in the last 3 or 4 years when I was there. She was the mental performance coach. So now she's just another coach. and athletes are real comfortable going to see coaches. So that kind of changed the, well, you're seeing the psych, so you must not be playing well, which isn't the case, to she's just a coach that can help me be better. So that worked really well for us. So what we introduced to try to talk about our culture more often and make it just an open subject and a transparent subject, because obviously when you're managing egos and personalities, sometimes people feel hurt or feel unvalued, and you need to try to draw it out. And so we implemented something called Tell the Truth Monday. No, we called it Tell the Truth Tuesday. But so it would be after the game. So we play all the games of WBL are played on the weekend, so Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. We'd usually have a video session on the Monday, and that's when coaches, because video never lies, you cut up all the bad stuff, good stuff, and you can show the video, this is where we want to get better, this is what we need to do better, etc. But prior to doing the video session, so we had Tell the Truth Monday, and so as a player, you had to come prepared with 2 good things that either you, a teammate, or a coach did or contributed, and then 1 thing that needs to improve. And I might not call on everyone, but I was always going to call on 3 or 4 people. And initially it was quite cumbersome, and people were a little bit, reluctant to share in front of their peers, especially when it came to things that weren't doing well, or things that we could be doing better. But just because we stuck with it and we kept emphasizing the importance of it, then it would also highlight things like, it'd be like, well, we've spoken about, the poor defensive communication, and this is the 3rd time in a row, 3rd week in a row that's come up. So hold yourselves accountable at training, rather than always having the coaches say, hey, we've spoken about this, what are you doing about it? Now they would start to hold themselves accountable. So at training, if something would break down in the defensive communication, and hey, remember we spoke about this is what we want to improve. And it got better. I must say it probably took 2 seasons by the time it was as effective as I was hoping it would be. But another thing that it really highlighted, and I'll talk a lot more about Susie at the end as well. She's just a really special athlete. She's, like I said, a big personality, and she's so competitive, the most competitive person I've ever met in my life. But what happens is she'll piss people off because at training, she's never wrong, and it's always whatever team she's on the ball. And so then people get pissed off, or she might say, hey, pass me the ball, I'm open. And so as a player, that might throw you off when the best player is yelling at you. And so, but through the Tell the Truth Monday, we were able to talk about it, because rather than everybody saying, oh, Susie's so mean and she yells at me, they'll be like, hey, you're going to get yelled at, the referee's going to get yelled at, the coach is going to get yelled at, even though that's not appropriate and she shouldn't be yelling at her teammates. But how are you still going to play your best when Susie's just had a go at you? And so then we were sort of drawing that out and helping people understand and manage those emotions in a game, especially, to be able to play better when you're being yelled at, because I guess we all knew it was going to happen, and rather than not talk about it, and at that point, Susie's 36, 37 in her career, she's not going to change. And while she's, there's probably shouldn't tell the story if she's going to come in, but there was one game, and she was playing terrible. She was never the first sub, but I had to take her out. I warned the assistant coaches, I'm like, be ready, I'm taking Susie out. She was the first sub coming out. The game had only started 2 minutes into the game. Anyway, so she sees the sub come in for her, and she sees that it's for her, so then straight away she gives me this death stare, like, fuck. And so she runs right up to me, and she's like, that's terrible fucking coaching, and then runs and sits down on the end of the bench. I was like, oh. Anyway, and she settled herself, she got it all out, and then I put her back in, and she was brilliant. And then, anyway, so her and I obviously caught up after the game. I'm like, mate, you can't be telling me that in the game. And she's like, I know, I'm so sorry, but I just get so angry and I get so competitive, and it just comes out. I said, all right, well, we need to work on some techniques. So we did lots of work with Jo about how she can control that, and what she says might be, we just need to make what she's saying more constructive, rather than, don't turn the ball over. Well, that's not helpful. Hey, next time, look over here because that defender is here is more helpful. So working on her language was really important, as well as working on in making sure everyone was aware or had a plan about managing how you're going to play through that, I say getting yelled at, but just through that different types of behaviours that were happening on the court. So Tell the Truth Monday was one way to just break down barriers, hold each other accountable, and then just highlight some of the good things, so how people were living through our values. So we especially focus on these three things. So if you could demonstrate examples of how people had lived those values, those are the things that we wanted to come out. Excuse me. I do something similar now with, and it sounds silly, but anyway, with my team managers, got 6 team managers, and we meet regularly, so once a month, and on the agenda that I've got regular meeting is at the bottom, it's staff recognition. And when initially I started doing that, I said, I just want you to nominate someone from your team, someone from another team, whoever that's gone above and beyond and supported you or done a good job, and I'll give them a phone call and say, hey, thank you for doing a good job. The team managers will. And I probably took 6 months where they would come to the meeting and they'd be like, I haven't really thought about it. Whereas now that we're continually emphasizing that and repeating that, they'll tell me midway through, without the meeting, they're like, hey, can you ring Andrew over at Fleet? He did such a good job helping out so-and-so. So I guess just that ability to make sure that we're recognizing staff and rewarding them, because all it takes is a thank you and people feel a lot of value out of that. So leadership, so we define that as the ability to make those around you better. And so I spoke a lot about, so there she is with that aggressive face. When in her last season, she got injured, and a significant injury, and couldn't play for 4, 5, 6, half the season pretty much. Anyways, in one of the first games first road trip, we went away, played against Bendigo, and they're not necessarily a great team, and we probably should have beaten them. And that's Michaela Cox there. She's the player that's played the most for us, New Zealander, also been to the Olympics. And she's the complete opposite. She's the super teammate, always positive, will never step out of line. Was happy as a coach. She's a dream player to coach because she's happy to play any role. She can play 30 minutes, she can play 10 minutes. She's never going to complain, and she works her ass off. She's the fittest person on this team, hands down. And so she was vice captain, so she became captain. So when we went on the road, obviously Susie didn't travel because she was injured. And anyways, long story short, we ended up losing this game that we shouldn't have. And Michaela came to see me after the game, and she's like, Claudia, can we bring Susie on the road next week? And I was like, well, A, we can't afford it because we can't afford to travel injured player. Or B, no, why? And she's like, well, she said, I knew in warm-ups that we were not playing well. She's like, people were sort of dilly-dallying around, people weren't taking it seriously. And she said, well, I just don't have it in me to bring them together and have a go at them and to shake them out of it. She's like, but Susie would have done it. And so I sort of highlighted just the power of Susie, because ultimately, and Susie just wants to win. And so I know that's why that people, I'll say, put up with it or accept it or are willing to accept the being yelled at, because she wants to win and she wants you, she needs you to win, and she wants you to play your best, because that's the only way they're going to be successful as a team. And so I think that's, while I say she yells and she's aggressive, she's actually doing it because she wants the greater good. And it might sound a bit sexist, but she's definitely like a bloke. She'll have a yell at you, and then the next minute she'll be like, hey, let's go for a coffee. Whereas some of the female athletes we deal with are like, I'm not talking to that person because she had to go at me, until we apologize and work through it. So Sue's a different breed. So she was sorely missed when she was injured on the sideline. So I'll talk about a little bit about mental toughness. So I've mentioned that's our ability to focus on the next most important things. So like Darcy here is probably about to have a turnover or lose the ball. And it's about not being lost in that moment, being upset about it. But it's about sprinting back on defense and making sure we get that stop. And so we have lots of examples of how that's, and I think that applies in anything in life, because you're always going to have some ups and downs in whatever you do and some challenges. and how you deal with those situations is really important, and your ability to get back up and continue with whatever it is that you want to go on. And so in my rookie year, we went to Perth and played a game, and they smacked us. I think we lost by 28 or 30. We were never in the game. And it was terrible. Anyway, and we flew home on the red eye. And it's a really, really long flight to be on when you've just got your ass kicked. And through your mind is going through everything that you did wrong. And I remember thinking that for probably the first 4 or 5 hours of that flight, I'm out of my league. Don't know how I got this head coaching gig. I'm not ready for this, and doubting myself. And then and I just had a bit of a light bulb moment. I'm like, no, what's the next most important thing I need to focus on? And then we had Adelaide at home in 2 days' time. I'm like, well, I just need to start thinking about Adelaide and preparing the team for Adelaide and how we're going to beat them. And just, I guess, getting away, because otherwise you'll just keep chasing your thoughts. And I'm sure Joe would have done a lot of work on that, but just chasing your thoughts into that negative tunnel, and it's real hard to dig yourself out of it. So Joe talks a lot about, hopefully not repeating everything she said, but what you say is what you see is what you do. And so when you've got big challenges in front of you, or you're worried about something, it's about just focusing on what it is that we control. Similarly, going into grand finals and that type of stuff, especially when it comes to basketball, we break it down by quarter. It's 4 quarters, so all we want to do in this first quarter is keep them to 12 or less. We want to get 16, we want to make sure we get 2 fast breaks. So just rather than saying, in 40 minutes we need to do all these things, right now this is what's most important for us in these first 10 minutes, and we just break it down into chunks. Makes it a lot more manageable, and people cope a lot better. And obviously at halftime is when we put in some adjustments and say, all right, that's what we're doing for the 3rd quarter and the 4th quarter. So switching completely now to another role. So in my Townsville City Council role, this is the local disaster centre. Not sure if anyone's been up there, but we've had actually quite a few Defence Force personnel up here. You guys did a bunch of training for our staff recently on the military appreciation process and working out. So that's how that's the process we use now. Disasters, most likely scenario, most dangerous scenario, and use that in all of our planning and triggers and warnings, etc. So in this disaster center, it's on Daly Road, and it's in my portfolio as General Manager of Infrastructure. I've got the emergency management team under me, and it's a brilliant facility. Obviously, as you can see there, every agency has a liaison officer that gets to sit there, so it just really improves that communication, which makes it really quick to get information across the different agencies. So in the monsoon of 2019, so it looks really empty here, and you're looking at, I remember the first time I walked in there, I go, oh wow, what a waste of resources, all these laptops and computers. And then fast forwarded 2 weeks in the monsoon and went, holy shit, there's not enough chairs for everyone. And so the monsoon was obviously quite challenging for a lot of reasons, and really some really good partnerships that we had, and we obviously depended on you guys quite heavily during that period. Through the default of my director being away and he got stuck in Adelaide, I became then the chair of this. So in the recovery effort, there's 4 groups. There's the built environment, so we're responsible for all the infrastructure. There's the environment, responsible for anything to do with the environment. Social, which is the people one, social and human. And then there's economic recovery, which obviously is all about the businesses and covering the city. And so I became, because he was away, the chair of that. And so and I quickly crash studied the plan, which I should have been doing when I realized he was away. But so the first day that we met, and on that, in my group of the built environment, we had the Army, we had QFES, Ergon, main roads, airport, all the critical infrastructure. And so we're all sitting in a big room, and everyone's looking at me going, right, what are we doing? Everyone's keen to do something. And I remember it had been a lot of high pressure situations, but it was probably one of the first times in my life where I was a little bit overwhelmed. I wasn't quite sure what to do. But thankfully, this fellow here that's been in about 1 billion disasters for Queensland Fire and Rescue assisted, and we got the city back up and going. So our objective was to restore critical infrastructure as quickly as we could. And one of my favorite stories, so we had, it was myself, the general manager of our maintenance crews, and we had Paul Pembroke and Chris Kukas, I think, was in our team. And so one of the first things we had to do was get rid of all the mud, and mud obviously everywhere across all the streets in the city. And we have 6 street sweepers, so we had big maps out and we're trying to divvy up what sections we would do and then what sections you guys would do. And the general manager of our maintenance team looked at Paul and he said, I didn't think the army had street sweepers. And I looked at him and he goes, no mate, I've got soldiers, lots of them, with brooms. so out they came and they swept up all the mud, and anyways, and we got the streets back open. Similarly, we had so we had briefings, we had morning and afternoon briefings, and every agency gave an update on the work they've been doing. And so following the mud, the next bit was obviously recovering all the rubbish. Everyone was throwing out all their furniture, etc. And so same thing, we divvied up the city. So it's a bit of a funny disaster, not a funny disaster, but I guess strange disaster, whereas a cyclone affects everyone. This monsoon only really affected probably 40 to 50% of the population. And so again, same thing, we had our rubbish trucks, curbside collection, and we repurposed a lot of our staff to pick up some of the rubbish. And then, and you guys as well. So we, rightly so, gave you guys all of Adalia. That's where all the 4-bedroom houses that are all fully insured, everything just got chucked to the street. Chris came in for his morning briefing, and very army-like with all your briefings. It was 3 minutes, straight to the point. We have been allocated the Adalia section. We will commence tomorrow morning, 0600. We'll be complete by tomorrow afternoon, 0300, at which time we'll extract ourselves. I said, oh, okay. If you think you can do all of Adalia in 24 hours, I'll be impressed. And so he came back in the afternoon and he said, we are not finished Adalia. We will be here till the rest of the week. I guess there was a lot of rubbish, and I think a little underestimated that. So it was a good working relationship. And I think, so some of the similar principles applied in this instance, where it was creating that shared vision and making sure that what our goal was to just restore critical infrastructure as quickly as we can. And we speak about it a lot in council, and now that we're going, I spoke about before, this cultural survey, we're trying to improve our own internal culture, and we speak about, in times of disaster, Townsville City Council is a whole different machine, we're a whole different beast. We operate so efficiently, we operate together, we make sure the city's safe, and we're all on that same page. And that's because the goal is really clear. The direction is really clear, and so everyone's able to work together much easier for whatever reason. So that's, I guess, our mantra now, to try to get, in times of disasters, we can be this efficient and this collaborative. Now let's make that our BAU. And that's about really having that clear vision of what our purpose is and what our job is, and how it drives that same vision all the time. We eventually rebuilt the whole, it took a long time. Didn't many people here get flooded? Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about Susie. So I spoke about her leadership style. And I'm assuming Brett Tate probably would have had the same thing, but similar type of. I've never seen anyone with such mental strength as Susie. And I say mental strength is probably not the right word, but belief in her own abilities as this person. So she's, I spoke about extremely competitive, so she always wants to win. Has this unwavering belief that she can win and that she can win the game for everyone. And she does have a massive fear of failure, and she works super hard. So she, as an athlete, super important, to take care of your body. So I'm assuming similarly with you guys in your jobs, you need to take care of your body. So that's about getting the right amount of sleep, drinking the right amount of water, so she knew she was getting older when she played for us the last couple of years, 36, 37, 38 with a bad back. Regularly got her massage every fortnight. Always, got her 8 hours of sleep, doesn't drink, because that was the only way she was going to extend her career. And we do, so we do with the athletes, we have wellness checks every morning when they wake up on their phone. They just put in, I slept 8 hours, it was good sleep, or it was bad sleep, feeling good about myself, or this is sore, whatever it might be. And so what that does is every day as a coach, I just get, it's just a graph really, but anything that's sort of an anomaly will just prompt the coach to be like, hey, you're right, something wrong, and then just have that conversation or just a bit of a check-in to see if everything is all right. It's another way for the athletes to be able to communicate, like, not feeling great today, and then that'll just prompt the conversation to just, hey, can I unload this off you, or unload this on you, or whatever it might be. There was, and so I don't know if you guys know what she does now that she's retired. Anyone there?
I don't know, but Liz goes
She's a counsellor, so she got elected last council election last March. So she's counsellor for this division actually, Annandale, Douglas, etc. So I remember when she rang me to tell me she was going to run for council. I'm like, oh, you've only ever been an athlete. I don't know how you're going to know anything about running a city. And I don't know why it surprised me, but she's brilliant. She's obviously, I work quite closely with all the counsellors, and she's such a hard worker, which I guess translates into anything. So she's really competitive. So she wants her division to be the best division. So I'm sure she rides around her bike and she takes photos of broken things and sends them to me and says, Claudia, gotta fix that fence over there, gotta fix that pothole. She wants her division to be the best. But she's been a really good, I was talking about, we had a briefing with the mayor this morning, and we were just talking about Susie and how her career of being this elite athlete and obviously being mentally tough has translated really well into her being a counsellor. A, because she works so hard, B, because she's competitive, but she wants to be good. So she knows she has this huge learning curve to work out how it is to be a good counsellor, but she just wants to be so good. So she's just a bit of a sponge, and she's trying to learn it all as it is. She doesn't want to let people down. She wants to be the one that's still winning in her mind. So we had another game where we'd lost 3 games in a row. Sorry, this was our 3rd loss against Sydney here at home, and we were down. We're down 1, and Susie got to the foul line. She had 2 free throws. She's normally an 80% free throw shooter. She's a very good free throw shooter. And she missed both free throws, and then we lost the game. So that was our 3rd loss, which, in this season we only get about 20 games. 3 losses is big to take. And I was rang her the next day. She was really upset. She was crying, lost the game, she was blah, blah, blah. And you say all those things as a coach, like, well, it shouldn't have come down to those free throws, you'll be all right. And the next week, so it was 4 days later, we're playing against Bendigo, and this time we were up 1, so they were fouling us, and I put another player to the foul line, so I inbound the ball to her, so she could shoot the free throws to win the game. Mia, she missed them, and then the next time out, Susie looked at me, she's like, you give me the ball, I'll win this game. And rightly so, she stepped up there. So she, even though she'd lost 4 days earlier, lost the game for us, missed the 2 free throws, she just stepped up, went swish, swish, won the game. And I think that ability, which goes to that mental toughness, but the ability to focus on the next most important thing, she has that in spades. Like she will, I might have lost that game last weekend, but I'm already over that. And I know I'm going to be able to win this game because I believe in myself. So her mindset is, if we could bottle that, lots of people will be very successful. And then I just touch on a little bit about diversity. I think it's probably important for a group like you guys, and certainly similarly the group that I work in. would go to meetings where I'm the only female. There's 50 blokes in the room all the time. And in the construction world, especially in the water world. And I think diversity is really important. And I've got that. So this, that guy there is actually my husband. And he was not an athlete, but he learned basketball obviously through being a no choice and being dragged around everywhere around the world, watching me play. But he ended up being a coach. But he learned the game a completely different way. So he learned it through doing, video tutorials, reading books, and not through playing. And so he explains things in a completely different way, or he understands the game in a completely different way. And that's really valuable. So as a head coach or as a leader or in any organization, I think just that ability to get some diverse opinions is really critical to success. And, we'll have lots of discussions at home about several things, and he'll be like, why do you do that? When the player drives, why do you help that way? And I'm like, I don't know, I just do it because I've just always done it. But he needs to know to explain it and make reason of it. So I think it was really helpful. And similarly with Luke Brennan there and Mike Probel, again, they played different positions to what I played, so they just bring you different views and different opinions about anything. And then as a head coach or as a leader, you can make the decision, take that information if you want it or not. And then I guess the critical part as well is that those assistant coaches then follow your decision and support it. But if you've got the ability to make sure that you can be transparent why you've made that decision based on the information that you have or the best information you have at the time, then they'll be able to follow you. I think the new CEO at Townsville City Council is really clear on that, and I really appreciate that some of the changes that he's made. He's not for decisions by steering committees or control groups, any of that stuff. He goes, no, you're the general manager. I want you to make the decision. So you can go get all the intel and go get all the information, but it's not decisions by committee. It's your decision. And so I think that's it. And then it's really clear as well. So then who's responsible for the decision and the accountability. But you can go get all the diverse opinions you want, and then you just got to be comfortable with the decision you make. And it's also, I guess that's one way to empower your staff. And we try to do that at work quite a bit. Some people are reluctant to delegate and let people make decisions. I think the important thing with that is if you're the leader that always steps in and tries to guide them and tell them what to do, you're doing them a disservice, really. They need to make those decisions and learn. But then as a leader, you need to be able to accept that there might be some mistakes. And as long as not repeatable mistakes, you should be fine with that. And then we can all, improve and try to make some improvements. And that's just my favorite slide because Michaela Cox was that player I spoke about. So she's about to play her 12th season, just had a baby. She had her 3-month-old and wanted to do she got asked to do the top of the hill, Queen of the Hill race in the city. And she had a C-section, emergency C-section as well, and was only going to walk up the hill with her stroller, but then I saw her photo the next day with her with the championship winning the ribbon. I said, Mick, you said you were going to walk. And she said, yeah, but there was another lady with the stroller and she started running, so I couldn't help myself and I sprinted the whole way up. So she's, again, an exceptional person, and maybe one day you guys can get her and speak as well, a little bit of a New Zealander. But I guess just, I should bring this to my work now, actually. These are all just things that we talk about a lot, especially with younger athletes in terms of doing all the right things. So if you want to have a good career, those are simple things. I think if you're the leader and you don't do those things, then it's easy for people to just not do them. So we had, again, I talk about the new CEO. I'm really enjoying his leadership. I think it's been really good learning from him, but his meetings and the previous CEO and the directors, they're always so busy and they're flat out. things are always running late, meetings get changed, whatever. No, this guy is meetings start on time and they finish on time. And it's really good. It's really, and then now, it just translates down and everyone's got a lot more, meeting discipline, for lack of a better word, but it's important because we spend a lot of time in meetings. But he's set that standard, and now that standard is, everyone does it. And it's, really simple type stuff and a bit of a no-brainer, but just because he's doing it, now everyone's doing it. So I think the impact, I guess, never underestimate your impact and how you're influencing people around you, whether that's up or down. I think I'll go back to what I said earlier, which is your influence is never neutral. What are some other definitions of leadership that you've heard?
Be the example, that's an easy one.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
I find that when junior soldiers actually come to you for advice, it's won't mean that you're a leader, but I think it sort of leads to a sort of thing looking for you for guidance. So they're not going to go to the person that they don't trust, they're going to go to the person that they trust and see as a leader.
Which I guess then begs that question, and how do you build the trust, and why can some people build trust and others can't?
It comes down to rapport that you build with the individual,
Yeah.
which plays a massive part.
Yeah. I had, so I know I mentioned it, but I'm just acting in that other role with Townsville Water and Waste, and this scientist that's in our team, so Laura, she's a very important role. She keeps us all safe. She's the she's the water quality, drinking water quality officer. So she's the one that's responsible to make sure that the water that comes out of our tap is safe to drink. And I had to brief the councillors and the exec on the blue-green algae, that issue. I don't know if anybody had discoloured water last year, and there was a little bit of taste and odour because we've got some algae in the dam, and that's highly possible it's going to occur again this summer. So I was just briefing them on that, and she helped me do the whole presentation, the PowerPoint, etc. Anyways, and she stayed back one day on her day off to do it, and came in when she was on leave during the school holidays. And anyways, I tried to go down to her desk and say thank you. She wasn't there, so I just left a post-it note. Laura, thanks for all the help. Claudia, this morning at the briefing, she goes, that's the first time someone said thank you to me in 4 years. She's like, a post-it note. She goes, yeah. I was like, oh. You hear those things, and it makes me sad that that's how we treat our employees, because I think she's really valuable. And that's the biggest risk we have is poisoning the whole city with drinking water, which is not going to happen, by the way. We're in good hands. But I thought it was sad that in 4 years that's the first time someone said thank you to her. Or disappointing anyway. But you're right, building rapport, so asking people about them. And I think and that was a big challenge with the fires. Which is why I'm no longer a head coach, because there's not much money in women's basketball. Unfortunately, the pay gap is huge between women's sport and male sport. So one NBA player makes 70 times what a WNBA player. That's the average. That's quite a bit of a pay gap difference there. But I've got 10 players, and so my best one is Susie, who's making, she's probably the best paid in the league. And then my bottom 3 players out of my 10, my bottom 3 players are making $5,000 for the year, for the season. And you're asking them to come to every training, come to every game, do all the extracurricular stuff, go to school, do all the speeches, and they're getting $5,000. So, and they're the ones that aren't playing either. They're not getting the court time of their shot. So I think that's a real challenge in terms of making sure that they feel valued, because without them we can't train properly. We're not going to win championships. And them feeling respected as well, and understanding that how they do contribute to the success we have on the floor, even though they might not be on the floor during the game. But without them, again, we wouldn't be winning championships. So just understanding how the role contributes and making sure that they know that is important.
Does anyone else have a definition of leadership that they'd like to share with the group?
Yeah, man. Obviously, we have our organisational one for leadership, which is influencing others to achieve the organisational goal, which we're obviously pretty comfortable with because it meshes with a lot of but I could pretty well cut that short of just anyone who can influence others to willingly do anything.
Yeah.
And whether that's positive or negative counts as leadership, and that's really important to recognise as well.
Yeah.
Perhaps shifting away from leadership forever. So, in your, I guess, your role as a counsellor, you probably encounter a fair bit of red tape. And so, how do you have potentially methods, attitudes, ways of doing things that help you push through what can perceivably be extra steps for the sake of extra steps, because you're to achieve ultimately what you're motivated.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I guess there is, so there's a few things there. So understanding why there is that red tape's important. I guess because we're council, we're legislated, and we're spending ratepayer money, so our decisions need to be good decisions and they need to be transparent. I can't just go fix the street in front of my house because there's a few ruts in it. Every decision we make gets scrutinized under a microscope. So I think just having clear processes to try to speed up some of the red tape stuff. Sometimes we just have red tape to have red tape, and back to that decision making. So who's accountable and who's able to make those decisions? So the lower we can push down the decision and have clear guidelines as to how you're supposed to make that decision, whether that's financial delegation or project scoping or whatever it might be. If I can delegate that down to a project officer and give them clear rules and guidelines of how they can make that decision, then I'm comfortable with that, and I can defend it up, and I can try to remove some of that red tape. But then there's obviously some instances where it just has to go through all that red tape. And I think probably the important thing there, and because staff do get frustrated with having 6 people need to sign off on you getting a pair of boots. Well, I think that's silly. While I'm trying to fight that battle there, I still need you to go get those 6 signatures to go get a pair of boots. And it's just explaining the why those things are in that, why those procedures are there. But there's some really good stuff on, I think it's Toyota, that he speaks about. You can have, if you have really good procedures, you can have average staff and be really high performing because the guidelines are really clear and the procedures are really clear. You can have really high performing staff and shit procedures and get nowhere. If you don't give them the tools to succeed.
You spoke about Tell the Tuesday or Monday, whatever it was.
Yeah, depend on the day.
We have the same thing practically after any activities that we do, the AARs, after action reviews.
Yeah.
Do you keep a record of those things that you pick up and regularly reflect or review to see if improvements have been made?
Yeah, definitely. So that's a good question. And we do, and similarly at council, we'll do lessons identified or lessons learned, whatever you want to call them, all the time, and then they get filed in a drawer, and then the event happens again, and that's still in that drawer. So the ability to go back and track and then see if you have improved, that's key. And so I guess there's different ways of doing it. Certainly in basketball it's probably a bit easier because we have so much statistics and data that we can use from game to game to show that things are improving or not improving. There's lots of data freely available. I know in council that's something we not struggle with, probably the wrong word, but no, there is a lot of data. How much of it is useful and how much of it is valid data is challenging sometimes. Like, if I'll talk about measuring performance, we have work orders. Well, we've got thousands of them. Like we'll do 1,800 work orders in a week throughout the whole organisation, and then some. So it's only as good as the data of the truck driver that's entering into the thing. So if he's getting a bit lazy, he might have done 10 potholes in the day, but he'll just charge it to one work order and close all the rest. So it looks like all those potholes got fixed, but it cost us $0. So I think you need to have some good systems in place that, because he's like, I don't want to spend half an hour, which is fair. I understand that as well. And sometimes, the connectivity, because we're with Optus, and we don't have good connectivity when you're in the outer reaches of the city. So there's all these challenges that make it difficult to get that really good data. And so you have to try to massage it all into what's useful to measure performance and then what's useful for the staff. Because ultimately, I just need him to fix the potholes as quickly as he can, as cheaply as he can. So if he puts it all to one number, fine, but yeah, it's a bit of a challenge. Yeah. But with basketball, you're getting shooting percentages, you're getting defensive stops, points per possession. There's so many things you can track. And then with video technology, you can say exactly how many shots you make in that corner as opposed to that corner. So we're going to force them to that corner. Like, there's a lot of information there that's quite fun to play with if you like numbers. Yeah. So Michaela, that New Zealander, she's quite, and Joe really helped with, sorry, I'm going to digress into another chat. Joe really helped with in terms of how the players take in information and how best they can I guess, absorb info quickly, so especially during timeouts and during halftime, etc. And so yeah, some people are very visual, some people are auditory, etc. So Michaela, for example, that New Zealander spoke about, she can't have too much because then it just turns like noise to her. It's like every pregame talk, she would sit right there in front of me, but she'd have her hands down, hands in her head. Sorry, head down, and then she'd play with her band. And that was it, because then that just let her focus on just my words, and that was fine. Darcy Garvin, because I always have my little whiteboard with my notes that I want to speak about. She was always trying to read my notes. So what we ended up doing then was writing the 3 key things on the back, so then when I was holding it, she could actually read it as well. So Dr. Joe that was here, she went through every athlete, and so I knew exactly, I mean, it's really valuable. I knew exactly how best to communicate with every single one of my players, and that was really, really useful. Kind of diverged into something else there, but yeah, I think, obviously we don't get that opportunity in everyday work to be able to have that information, but I guess through learning with your team and your staff, you'll know how best they like to be communicated with. Because everyone's different.
Yeah, I used to, when I was talking to my section commanders when I was a platoon commander, I used to write in big letters and basically memorise what I was going to say and then just put it in the circle. We'd all be lying in the circle and just talk, because I got my version of leadership's, it's called heroic or inspirational. And I always got taught that you got to look them in the eye if you want them to do something for you. And so, but they preferred to read what it was so they could memorise it, and that's how I used to do it. Yeah. Quite fun.
Similarly, like scouting, when we would do scout to prepare for teams, so we would always do a scout report, which had exactly, probably their top 5 actions and how you're going to defend them, which way you're going to go around the defender, etc. So that was a written report. I mean, we spoon feed these athletes. Then they had video on every player that they could watch. So we'd watch it as a team, but they'd also have it sent to their, so we use this huddle, so they also have it all on their mobile phone. They could watch it before the video, before the session if they wanted to. And then some athletes really learned by doing, so we would walk through it on the floor. So you're going to come here, you're going to step that way, you're going to do this. We'd walk those ones through it. So really, come game time, there were no excuses. They'd been given that information multiple ways, and I guess it's all about providing them all the tools to be able to succeed when you're on the floor, because obviously you got no time to think then, you're just reacting.
So in your heightened profile as a athlete, coach, and now general manager, it's fair to say that you would have had your fair share of criticism and negative reporting. What methods did you put in place to sort of push that aside? So especially if you've lost a final series or in the floods, for instance. Yeah,
and I think that's only normal. So I think, and probably being an athlete, I guess, and it happens now at work as well. Like we had one session where all the general managers of infrastructure, there's 4 of us in infrastructure, and the CEO gave us a good, not beat down, but he gave us a good lashing about some issues that were happening. And it was quite funny because the other three were the three guys, and they all came out of there like, well, you know, they're really down and depressed. And I'm thinking, well, he can't make me do push-ups or run, so it's not that bad. But I think because you've been that athlete, you've been, I've just been told, that's wrong, you need to do it again, do it again, do it again. And so I'm not afraid of feedback, which is different to criticism. But, so if I'm getting feedback from, and I've made a mistake, that's fair. I'd rather know so I can improve and do it better. And I think that's how you need to look at it, is they're telling you because they want you to be better and they think they believe in you. When it's criticism, then I think, and it's not useful criticism that you might get from fans or other coaches or whatever it might be, you just have to block it out and not disregard it. So I think, just surrounding yourself with your support circle of who believes in you is really important in those times that you're copping it. Because then it's just noise and you just got to block it out. It's not useful and it's not helping you get to where you want to be. Yeah.
So these players earn little money in the WNBL, certainly compared to the male professional sports. Brent Tate said yesterday the thing that sets the edge from elite sportsmen is their competitiveness. You've said it about Susie, probably about Michaela Cox. So, and there'd be players who can only cut it in the WNBL, don't necessarily have the physique or the skill to go to the WNBA and contest there, or to go to college or whatever. What motivates people to, your players, and I'm assuming the coaching staff, to get paid a paucity of money? You've no doubt got to scrounge for resources. What actually motivates players to be as competitive as they are?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think it's different for different people. And you're right. So I think the league is getting a bit better. So the minimum wage is now $15,000. So at least the bottom three players are all getting $15,000 a year, and there is some progress being made. But they're clearly not playing because they're going to be rich one day from basketball. And I think it's a few things. I know that for me, it's about being able to compete. It's not something you get to do at work. You can't be the first one to the drink fountain or photocopy or whatever. So just competing, that really drives people. And then being able to be your best and then being part of a team, I think, is a big one that is important. I think when you're the coach or the club, clubs play a big role in that, in fostering that team culture and being proud of and being able to be part of something special. So I think those are some big motivators for some of the players. A lot of them, not most of them are from outside of Townsville, so they're moving up here to be part of the Fire. So it's important that they feel part of something that's for the greater good, and that they're being able to be pushed. I think people really like to be pushed sometimes. So I would suggest, so that'll be some of the motivation. Holding a trophy. It's pretty special, And I think, the club, the Townsville Fire, there's 8 clubs in WNBL all around Australia, and we're really fortunate here. So we have great relationships with you guys, a big sponsor, JCU, because Townsville really is a small town. Obviously, we don't have all the big corporates that Sydney would or Melbourne would. So it's really, and it's hard to recruit players to come to Townsville. So young, whatever it might be, 19, 20-year-olds would rather play in Melbourne if they could. And they'll play in Melbourne for less money. But then they come here and they get here and they're like, oh, this is awesome. It's really good. Like, it's a great club. We have really good support. We get to do some really fun things like with you guys. We put them through that obstacle course a few times in the gym here as well. So we get to do some really fun things. They all went up, so a few of them went up in helicopters up to Harvey Range. And we get to do lots of community benefit type of activities, whether it be in schools or with some of there's a big program we run with kids in care, so especially females that are in care, displaced from their families. And so I think that's a big attraction, and we're lucky. I guess it makes the Townsville Fire probably one of the more special clubs across all of Australia to be able to have all these extra things, and the weather obviously is beautiful as well. Not like Melbourne weather. Or Canberra, that's probably the worst. Yeah.
Have we got
Yeah, sorry, I got another one. You mentioned during the floods that you had to take on a position of high duties, and how would it be beneficial to have understudied the position above you. Do you have any programs or training now in place that rectify that kind of fault that was identified?
Yeah. So we do now a lot. Like I said, we've implemented that military appreciation process, and we've put probably over 100 staff through that now. That process, just because staff are always on leave or staff leave, etc. So that's been really beneficial. We do now some exercises prior. We did one which was so like full COVID. So there's COVID throughout Townsville, so everything's locked down, and there's a cyclone coming, and then how are we going to handle that situation, because we probably won't be able to meet at the LDCC, and then how do we make sure the city's safe and we still got water and electricity. So we've done a lot of that exercising and planning now. And then it's also about making sure that all the deputies of those people that are in their roles know that they're the deputies, which was my mistake. Yeah. So communicating those out. So the local disaster coordinator, Wayne Pretty, has now sent all those plans to everyone that's deputy and said, make sure you've read this. So-and-so's down, you're the next in charge, so you gotta be able to aware what your responsibilities are. Yeah.
Can we go back to the picture of the
LDCC?
The Jenny Hill?
Yeah.
Just to explain how it works. So this is over on Walcock Street in Garbutt, brand new facility. Wayne Preedy, the
local disaster coordinator?
Yeah, the local disaster coordinator was the SSM of Beat Squadron 3rd 4th Cavalry Regiment when it existed up here, like the APCs, Bushmasters down the road. So when a disaster happens, like the 29th of June this year when Townsville went into lockdown for the COVID, Commander 3 Brigade sits where that army trousers are, next to Commander 3 Brigade's the Chief of Police. Over here at the main table, now I found this really interesting from the management perspective. Down the right-hand side of the main table, as you look at it, is like the police watch supervisor, I think he is, or ops manager. There's fire, there's ambulance. So they sit down that side. Down this side, and I found this super interesting, is like Townsville Commerce, I think. Lisa Wolf was sitting down there.
That's the, so it's called the Townsville Local Disaster Management Group. Jenny Hill is the chair of that group when it gets activated, so currently it's in stand down. And these are the core members, and these are supporting agencies all around. Exactly right, so that's the director, my director, so he's the Emergency Response Group, Townsville City Council, and then police, QFES, SES, Townsville Enterprise, Townsville Hospitals in there as well, and Ergon. They're all the core members, so they're voting rights in terms of any decisions that the local disaster management group will make, and obviously all those decisions will get tested in courts later. So in that monsoon, there was a decision to open the gates ahead of what the emergency action plan says for the dam gates. But that emergency action plan is to protect the dam wall. The decision to open the gates early was because of all the rain that was still coming. but obviously it proved that it didn't make a difference in the end. There was that much rain that whether we opened them or not. So obviously that decision got highly scrutinised and has been through a number of iterations to come back and say, no, the right decision was made. But any decision that this group makes obviously might affect people's lives. And so it gets scrutinised, yeah.
And I've only ever been to that for the lockdown in June. But I found it was fascinating because we think as the military that, we possess all the power, and around the table, the quality of information and the inputs of information, they were asking questions about how much hotel space is available from the Townsville Enterprise lady, and she went away and found out how many beds could be made available in hotel rooms. Were we going to have to quarantine, etc., etc., etc. So behind all of this is this group. 3 Brigade and Combat Training Centre have also supported the council the last 3 years that I know of with enabling the group to understand the military appreciation process. So we don't realise that our process for coming up with a decision essentially in battle has significant applications to groups such as this in the management of disasters such as these. And I know for the last 3 years we've done that training about the military appreciation process, which is great, because it's interesting also that we, the military, are now listening to lessons from a captain of the council and an elite sports person in their own right. So I think we've got a lot to learn from each other, but that's essentially what happens.
So that big room where everyone was in was here, but back this room right behind it is the intelligence room, and that's where we would have all of our flood engineers. We had Tim Klassen that used to be with you guys, the GIS. He was brilliant, did all the mapping for us with all the photos and the mapping on our GIS system. He was in there full-time, seconded from the Army. We might have some, all of our dam engineers in there. And so they're looking at all the different scenarios, especially that we had that possible cyclone Kimmy that came, so we were in there. And they're looking at most likely, most dangerous, and that one was a really challenging one because the 3 different models had it, one was striking 24 hours, the other one in 48. Anyways, so we had like about 6 different scenarios going, but with that process, now you got your triggers that sort of identify which scenario it's going to be, and then you've got all your planning, and we had all the comms and all the messaging, and it's been really useful actually. Yeah, we love it. It's quite simple. We've got all the templates set up now, so we just populate stuff into them, and off we go. We feel much better prepared. Yeah, it's good.
Come on, someone's surely got one more question.
If that model's successful for you, has it then been forwarded on to other councils around Australia, or is it a localised council thing?
It's only, as far as I'm aware, it's only localised Townsville, and it's probably a lot of it due to our local disaster coordinator being ex-Army and having that great relationship that we've been able to implement it. Yep.
Brisbane does it, obviously. They've got 7 Brigade there. I'd assume 1 Brigade does it, with 2nd Division now being responsible for domestic operations. I'm assuming their influence certainly goes into the state disaster management, not necessarily local, but it's a great lesson learned, that's for sure. Yeah.
And again, I talk about our new CEO, but he's very clear on, he wants to know, and it doesn't quite work that easy, but he's keen to know. He's like, what wind speed am I sending staff home? like, he wants us to have it all planned out. And I'm like, well, if the flood comes first and the water comes up, we're sending them home first before wind speed gets to 100k an hour. But he's very much detail type of focus, and there needs to be a plan for everything that we're dealing with. Similarly with the blue-green algae that might occur again this summer, the bloom might occur, and he's like, I want you to do graphics on, when there's 120,000 of these per milliliter, what that means to the community, when there's 150, so that it's really clear and the messaging is clear and the community can be aware, because what will happen is we can still provide clean drinking water, we just can't provide as much because we can't produce it as quickly. So we need people to be, not water their lawns and those types of things. So let's be really clear with how that messaging looks like and what the triggers are, and then people will be aware of it ahead of time rather than, hey, all of a sudden, don't turn your showers on.
I know, like Mackay, Proserpine, Rockhampton, because they've been affected the last few years, are going towards similar structures, not necessarily as well funded as all of this, but I know they're going towards similar structures because of similar disasters happening in their local areas, and they can't afford to continually reinvent the wheel. So I know they've gone towards a model like this. Cairns is pretty good, but they've got 51 FNQR and HMAS Cairns up there. So they don't necessarily, to my knowledge, Claudia might know more, it's not like they're stovepipe, but they don't necessarily share information, and we could be accused of that in the military as well. Like in 2 Cav Regiment, I'm sure you're doing something that could be meaningful, but 2nd 14th mightn't necessarily know about it. I think it's in a similar vein to that. Is it?
Yes.
Is that?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, when it comes to sharing and just collaborating, it's a bit challenging sometimes. Yeah, everyone gets busy in their own little world. Yeah.
So there was another question over here.
The implementation of other, having worked with defence and the most likely not dangerous. Has there been other things that sort of popped up as well?
There have, and I guess it's, about, there's a lot, I guess, we talk about that a lot, but there's lots of technology that's changing all the time. So whether it's, drones or there's really low cost sensors, but prior it probably was a little bit more expensive to have river gauges and sensors that provide all that data back to us. Now that technology is so cheap with the Internet of Things that we've put a whole bunch of sensors in our sewers. So our sewers give us a good indication of the flood coming up as well, because there's lots of infiltration through sewers. So we've got that. We've got cameras on rivers and bridge crossings now that all go back to the LDCC, so you can make a lot better informed decisions. Similarly with all the sensors that we have around the dam wall, rather than having someone physically at the dam ringing in, we've got it all patched back and we can make much better informed decisions quicker. So I guess we spoke about that before, that data. Sometimes you can have too much data and you try to make sense of it all. But I guess in times of disasters, you want to be really clear with what data is important to you. And through the military appreciation process, when you're working out your triggers and what information you need, then that sort of gives you the idea of what data it is that you need. So similarly, you spoke about the blue-green algae. We're going to we sample the dam now. We sample it twice a week. It's a manual process. Someone gets in a boat, goes out in the middle of the dam, takes a sample, comes back, brings it back to the lab. So there's real-time monitoring buoys. So we've just got the go-ahead now to try to install some of those, which will just provide us real-time data on dissolved oxygen in the dam, the temperature, the water temperature, that type of stuff. And then we can go get other samples as we need, but at least we can always give us an indication, hey, the water temperature is just spiking. Let's go get some extra testing now. So being a bit smarter with some of the stuff we have, And like COVID has sort of driven that as well. I don't know if you guys had rules, but we had rules. We could only have, rather like normally a crew truck would have 4 people in a truck, and now we can only have 2. And so people driving in all sorts of different vehicles and not knowing where they were. So, but just having we had checking codes now in our vehicles that we know who's driving, who's where. just because it was really a fast-moving beast in terms of trying to make sure people were safe. Just being a bit smart about how we did it. But yeah, there's lots of great technology out there, and it's a bit of a challenge sometimes just understanding it all, but and implementing it. And through the red tape, getting it approved by the IT department's the other issue.
My final question, asked Brent Tate yesterday, because he's a 2006 premiership winner with Brisbane Broncos. I thought under Coach Bennett that Brisbane would have had a master plan. They would have had everything worked out, you know, the number of points per game they needed to score to win, etc., etc. Found out that 8 weeks out from the finals, looked like they weren't even going to make the finals. Coach Bennett sacked 2 popular players who weren't towing the line. They had a meeting, decided to improve, won the premiership. When you won the championship, what was your plan? And talk us through the ups and downs of the year.
So I took over the team. We had won back-to-back championships. So there was a lot of pressure to do well. So my rookie season, we made the playoffs, but we finished, we lost in the semi. And then the next year was the year we won. So I changed a few of the players on the team and in between those 2 teams. So Susie was clearly our best player, and so I spoke about that. So managing all those personalities sometimes is a bit of a challenge. And in that team, when we finished 4th, you know, some people just, that's a good word to say, but I guess, yeah, through a little bit, yeah, their influence wasn't always positive, would be a better way to say it. And yeah, they'd get upset with Susan, and they'd go home. Because we had them all the girls were sponsored by Quest, so we had 7 of them, which probably isn't a great thing, but 7 of them living in the same accommodation down the Strand. So it's easy to go home after training and be like, oh, fucking those, you know, and then just have nice big bitch sessions. And so I think in those times, it's really important to have people be like, no, just get off the chest, but we're done now and move on, and not allow that. So, you know, that standard you walk past is what you accept. So you need those good leaders within that group to be like, no, that's not helping any of us. You sitting here bitching for an hour about Susie, because without Susie, we're not winning anything. And it was actually my husband. I remember he wasn't on the coaching staff then, but we had a game down in Adelaide, who was the worst team in the league. They hadn't won a game, you know, and we were in the top 4, and we fought with ourselves for about 35 minutes of the game, and then the last 5 minutes we decided to turn the shit on and win the game. And I remember coming home being so frustrated, and I'm like, oh, Susie, this and blah, blah, and the players are bitching about this and blah, blah. And Mike, my husband, was like, you tell all those players to shut the fuck up, because without Susie, they're not winning anything. So they need to understand how they're going to work with her better. Anyway, so because you can do that as a coach, you can do that less as a general manager, just get rid of people. So I got rid of 2 or 3 of those poor influences, brought in some players that were going to buy into what the culture and the vision was, especially that selflessness bit, which is putting the team's needs ahead of your needs. And that was a key thing that we sold that year, and the year that we won that championship. So we also had 2 American imports that were quite good, but sometimes again with American imports, because they're not a different culture, they're coming in at the last minute. It's important for them to get high point average and score, because that means they'll get another contract the next year. So it's, yeah, we're really lucky that there's 2 people we recruited, and there was a lot of work that goes into that, but the 2 players that were recruited from America bought into that selflessness, and that they were willing to, you know, not just be black holes and shoot the ball all the time, but to be part of that game plan. And that was a real key. And I think, you know, we're kind of lucky there, because sometimes, you know, Americans aren't really here for the whole time, so they're just here for the season and they bugger off. But the 2 that we had were great, and they bought in. And whether that's, you know, because like I said, we spoke about it every day, it was a big part of our practice. It was just talking about our culture and how we're going to do it together and how we're going to put the team ahead of our own needs. So whether that obviously influenced them, we had some good leaders with Susie and Michaela, etc. But they bought in, so that really helped. And then the other big plan, so we had Susie. So I don't know if you guys have heard of Liz Cambridge. So she played on the team that we had to beat to win. So she's 6'8", so she makes Susie look small. Very, very good. You know, the first female that dunked in the Olympics, but easily probably the only player in the world that can defend her is Susie, I think. And so we're really lucky that Susie got under her skin and did a good job. So much so that Liz punched her in the middle of the game one time and dropped her to the ground. But I think those were some of the key things that led to that success. Everyone bought into that vision and no one disrupted it. And as soon as someone got out of line, there was a teammate there to say, hey, remember, we're all in this together and that's our goal. I think we did a lot of preparation with Brent Goris, who was our trainer. So that year, the season got shortened. So we were playing 3 games a week, which is really high physical load. And we needed players, so we knew we'd have less training time. So how we were educating the players, so I spoke about lots of video, lots of one-on-one meetings rather than time on the floor, because we didn't want them on their feet as much either, just to reduce that load on them. And then the really important thing that we had to put in, because the load was so big, was just the recovery was so much more important. So we spoke about that a lot. But things we did, and it sounds silly, but we gave them, so we had a list. So if you did leg drains, we sit on the wall with your legs up, that was 2 points. I think if you did an ice bath for 10 minutes, that was 10 points. If you ate a banana, that was 1 point. All these recovery things, if you iced, you had a series of points, and every player had to get 12 points after every game. And we graphed it, and we would just put it in the group chat so people knew. And then they would just hold themselves accountable to that. So I'd never had, because that's the biggest challenge as a coach, is always following up, hey, have you done this, have you done this, have you done this? So the more that you can drive that behavior from within and themselves holding each other accountable, just makes your job a lot easier. So we had that implemented, and what it did is it did work really well. They'd go to training, they'd train, they'd finish training, and then you'd see 8 of them sitting on the wall, legs up, having hydrolyte, block, whatever it was. So they're all getting their points and they're holding each other accountable. So a few things like that really helped. Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks.
All right. So on behalf of the group and the Cove audience online, I'd like to thank you for the insights you've expressed to us this afternoon. I've certainly enjoyed it, and on a personal note, Claudia and Susie at my house, we're monumental fans, not of basketball, but of women doing great and being great influences and role models. And Claudia is certainly one of those, and Susie Bakovic is another one who we really respect in our house. Never thought I'd get to meet you, but thanks for the job this afternoon, and thanks for the wisdom that you've imparted upon us.